I have this sense of awareness, and I feel I'm aware. I recognize myself, and I think the I we talk about, I really recognized it many years ago in the plane when I felt it was going to crash, and I felt very safe suddenly because I was with myself, which I recognized in a hard situation where suddenly peace came because I could sense I was not alone. I was with me. And nobody taught me that, but I just had no choice but to discover myself and recognize myself. So on a daily basis, for many little things, like I guess everybody, or most of the people, I get lost and confused and caught by separate self. And through the teachings, I have a much better understanding about what is ego and what is, which means separate self. I've been following teachings for many years, and sometimes ego was quite an abstract concept. Now I have clearly, and I get clearly what we talk about. But for me, I feel the easiest way to find myself is to feel my self-love. It's not necessarily what we've been teaching us these days, and I realized that I need to do yoga meditations because I've listened very much to your teachings. I understand what you talk about, but sometimes it doesn't go beyond a certain point where I don't completely manifest and integrate what I understand. And my question is beyond running the practice, because this is something I think that needs to be done. Just remembering that I'm love, remembering who I am, is the only thing to do.
Yes, that would be sufficient, and to allow your thoughts and feelings and your subsequent activities and relationships to be informed by your knowledge of yourself as love. To check that all your thoughts and feelings and the subsequent activities and relationships are an expression of your knowledge of yourself as love. Yes, that would be a valid practice, yes. In this moment, are you experiencing anything other than the knowing of your experience? Have you ever experienced anything other than the knowing of experience? Could you ever experience anything other than the knowing of experience? No. So knowing or experiencing is all that you ever know. Yes? So to begin with, it's legitimate to conceive this knowing or awareness in the background of awareness, in the background of experience. We speak of the witnessing presence of awareness, to which the objects, thoughts, sensations and perceptions appear. So we make this distinction between the subject, the witness, the knower, awareness, and the object, the witnessed, or the known. Yes? And that's a legitimate step to take because it draws attention to the presence of awareness. But at some point we have to collapse this distinction between the subject and the object, between the knower and the known. Because after all, we are speaking of non-duality here. There is not room in non-duality for a subject and an object. So it's not always necessary when you're in the midst of your daily activities to withdraw your attention from the object in order to go back to your true nature. Sometimes circumstances don't permit that. Your attention is required on the object. So then it's in exactly the same way that we don't need to turn the movie off in order to see the screen. So we don't have to turn away turn our attention away from objective experience in order to know this knowing. After all, you have just acknowledged that all you know of these so-called objects is the knowing of them. So the screen of awareness is not just shining in the background of all experience. We cannot even say that it pervades the foreground of experience. It is all there is to experience. To begin with, we say the screen is in the background of the movie. Then we say the screen pervades the movie. And then we realize, no, there is no such thing as a movie that is pervaded by the screen. All there is to the movie is the screen. All there is to experience is the knowing of it.
Yeah, I get that.
So you don't have to separate yourself out from experience, although that is a legitimate first step.
Yes, because that's what I've been sensing. Like, I remember one lecture you said that sometimes that we're like closing our hand and that we all have to do is this, like open it. Like that metaphor, I saw a video that you said that. But I felt that coming back, I don't know if it's the good thing or waste of time.
That returning to yourself, that returning of the attention to the source of attention rather than directing it towards the object is a legitimate and necessary step. Mm-hmm. But at some point we have to go back to objective experience without losing this understanding. In other words, although we may first find ourselves or recognize ourselves in the background of experience, in time we have to find ourselves in the midst of experience. Is there any part of your experience that is not pervaded by the knowing of it? That knowing is yourself. When you were a 5-year-old girl, was there any part of your experience that was not pervaded by the knowing of it? And was the knowing with which your 5-year-old experience was pervaded any different from the knowing with which your current experience is pervaded? So although your 5-year-old experience was very different from your current experience, the stuff out of which both experiences were made is the same, just like all dramas are made out of the same screen, all movies are made out of the same screen. So it is this knowing or this consciousness that is coloring itself in the form of all experience, but it never ceases being itself. So the world is like a hologram in awareness or in consciousness, made of, appearing in consciousness, known by consciousness, made of consciousness. To meditate means to know yourself as this knowing, as this awareness. Now, to begin with, we find that in the back, we recognize this knowing in the background of experience, but later we see that all there is to experience is the knowing of it. So we find ourselves both in the background and the foreground. In fact, the distinction between the background and the foreground dissolves. There is just the knowing of experience, and I am that knowing.
Yes, hi Rupert. I have a couple of questions related to...
Just one of them.
Just one of them?
The most important.
Okay, just one. Maybe I'll morph them into one, both of them.
Okay, and then
Get
let's
away with that.
Okay.
I've always been confused by the terms the observer is the observed and the thinker is the thought. And I can make sense of them, especially in this background, intellectually, in the sense that everything is consciousness, obviously. But I just wanted to give you a couple examples, and I'd like you just to tell me what you think of these examples. If I'm a painter absorbed in my painting, or if I'm driving and I'm in a difficult situation and I'm completely absorbed in what's going on, the cars, the traffic lights, and everything else, I'm assuming that that's not an example of the observer being the observed. Am I correct? That phrase does not refer to simple absorption in a task. Am I correct in thinking that?
I'm not going to answer your question directly. I'm just going to address this idea that the observer is the observed. It's a legitimate thing to say, but it's not a very efficient statement, because if it is understood that the reality of the observer and the reality of the observed are the same, then there is no longer an observer and the observed.
Yes,
you cannot say that two lovers merge with each other, because when they're merged, there are no longer two lovers. Hence Rumi, true lovers never really meet. You cannot... There is no observer or observed when the single reality, the single nature of reality shines. The observer and the observed only appear when consciousness is refracted through the mind. The single field of your own mind divides itself into the dreamed character and the dreamed world. When you so there seems to be the observer, the dreamed character, and the observed, the dreamed world, in the dream. But the reality of these two, the observer and the observed, is not a fusion of the two. It's that the reality of the dreamed world is not in the dreamed world. So it's a misleading statement. Neither the observer nor the observed survive their meeting. It's like when two lovers come together, neither of the lovers survives in their union.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. I think I was trying to fuse two things together. Your explanation helps me, so that's great. Thank you.
There's a passage in Balayani, a line that I've been wondering about. It is, and the self is the place where the invisible appears. And it seemed to me this morning maybe a clue, and I wanted to check my thinking, and maybe you could...
The self is a place where the invisible appears.
Yes. You said this morning something to the effect of that in traditional spiritual teaching, the self is being, you used a word that I can't remember, but I think the gist of it was that being was implied all possibilities within being are all possibilities. You used another word that was better, but...
Okay, I don't remember.
And I wondered if the invisible that appears is the manifestation of those possibilities as given form through perception.
Yes, so the separate self would be the finite mind would be the means through which the invisible appears as the visible. Remember, infinite consciousness, or let's say invisible consciousness, formless consciousness, but in reference to this quotation, let's say invisible consciousness, cannot know the visible world directly. The invisible consciousness knows the visible world through the agency of a finite mind.
Okay.
So in that sense, the finite mind, or the self in this quotation, is the means by which the invisible sees the visible.
Hi, Rupert. I'd like to ask something a bit more practical. Well,
All our conversations are practical.
some simpler problems that I face when I meditate. I guess not as complex as love. This morning's meditation was beautiful. And I find that I normally do that in the quiet space of my study room at home on the commute to work. I put on my headset, absolute quiet environment, and I'm able to go to that feeling of I amness and stay there for long enough, and the non-doing of slipping into your natural state happens by itself. What I struggle with is sometimes sitting in more open space and when I have distractions. Although we know that that's the natural state, to get there at least you need to trace some path. And the path, the pointer that I follow is that exactly what you mentioned earlier, that feeling of I am. Try to stay on that. And every time your mind wanders, you bring it back. But when I have, sometimes I just can't help it when there's a bit too many distractions, and then I just find that I can't settle in. Now, the solution could be simple, just stop doing what I'm doing and go away, or confine myself to a quiet environment to do that. I was hoping there would be a better answer.
Well, you could find a quieter environment, or stop fighting with your mind and recognizing that whatever agitation there is in your mind in the form of thoughts and perceptions is a coloring of your being, a coloring of the I am, just as the movie is a coloring of the screen. And therefore, there are really no such things as distractions, because all there is in your experience is the knowing of it. All your thoughts and perceptions are made of the knowing of them. So they are all transparent to knowing. So you could stop trying to focus inwardly on the feeling of being, or the sense I am. You could let your mind go where it wants to go, which is outwards towards perceptions or towards thoughts. Because your essential being isn't just present in the background of your experience. It pervades your experience. The screen isn't just behind the image, it pervades the image. So it's perfectly valid to rest your attention in your being, in the background of experience. But it's also, you can find yourself in the midst of experience. Like now, is there any part of your experience that is not pervaded by the knowing of it? That knowing is all there is to experience. You find yourself everywhere. So you don't have to force your mind to go back to its source, because even all your experience is the activity of your mind. It's the activity of mind, the activity of knowing. So yes, you could find a quieter place, to retire to, or you could give up fighting with your mind and see that the being that you previously sought in the background of your experience, in fact, pervades the entirety of your experience. And then there are no longer any distractions.
Yeah, thank you. I think I need to work on it.
No, you don't need to work on it. I mean, is there anything present in your experience now other than the knowing of it?
I noticed that when I ask that question, the attention moves from the object to the subject.
But in this case, there isn't an object and a subject. There is just. Are you having one experience now or two experiences?
One experience.
Are you ever having more than one experience?
No.
Yeah, experience is always one thing. Yeah? What is the one thing you are now experiencing? What is it made of? This one thing that you are always experiencing, what is it made of?
My knowing of it?
Yeah, but it's not the knowing of it, because in the statement, the knowing of it, we have two things. We have it and knowing. But you've already said you're not experiencing two things now. You're not having two experiences. You're not experiencing it and the knowing of it. Yeah? You're just having one experience. There is just experiencing. And experiencing is one thing, yes?
Yes.
Now, touch the stuff that this one experience is made of. Well, let me ask the question another way around. Is there anything to the current experience other than knowing? Or we could say experiencing.
No.
That's it. And whenever you ask yourself that question, whatever you are experiencing, the answer to that question, what is the stuff the current experience is made of, is always the same answer. You might be deeply depressed, you might be ecstatically happy, you might be just walking down the street. Whatever you're experiencing, you're always having one experience. Or rather, there is only one experience, not you are having one experience. That suggests you and experience. There is one experience, or there is experience. Yes, you can always say that. There is experience. And experience is always one. And if you are experiencing experience, you must be experiencing the stuff it is made of. Yeah, you can't watch a movie without seeing the screen. You can't see a cloud without seeing the sky. So if you are experiencing experience, and you are, you must be knowing the stuff it is made of. So you don't have to discipline your mind. You don't have to push away your experience and try to find yourself in the background of experience. You can do that. But if your mind rebels, you don't have to do that, because you are in the foreground of it. This knowing is in the foreground of experience. This knowing is all there is to experience. That there is no... Ultimately, this whole idea of the foreground and background of experience is a concession to duality. There is no foreground or background of experience. Experience is always one single, intimate, seamless, indivisible whole, with no parts or no objects or no selves or no entities or no foreground and no background. Just pure knowing, modulating itself in all the forms of experience. So you don't have to go anywhere to find this knowing. You never know anything other than this knowing. It doesn't have to be found. It just has to be recognized. It doesn't have to be found because it was never lost. There is nowhere. Where would it be lost? Where would it hide itself? Where is there an experience where knowing could be hidden? Where could the screen be hidden in the movie?
Yes, I think I can access that. It just feels slightly different from the experience when you sink into I am.
Well, yes, I am is the experience of uncoloured knowing,
Right.
and experience is coloured knowing.
Right.
Just
Yes.
as the movie is the coloured screen, and in the absence of movie it is the uncoloured screen, but it's always the same screen. So yes, the I am is consciousness at rest. Experience is consciousness in motion, but always the same consciousness, the same knowing. Knowing at rest, knowing in motion.
Right.
But don't, yes, in knowing at rest, you experience it in its
Maybe pure form.
in
That's
its
how
pure form, in its unflavoured form.
Yes.
Whereas in experience, knowing has numerous different flavours.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think recognizing that is the first step.